The pen was heavier than it should have been. It rested between my fingers, cold metal biting into skin that had gone numb sometime between the second and third time my uncle cleared his throat. The dining room chandelier hummed softly overhead, one of its bulbs flickering like it was undecided about staying alive. Plates sat untouched. The smell of reheated food hung in the air, oily and sweet, clashing with the sharp scent of my mother's perfume drifting from across the table. No one spoke. They were all watching my hand. My cousin sat stiffly beside my aunt, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping near his ear. My older brother avoided my eyes entirely, studying a crack in the wooden table as if it might open and swallow him. My father's fingers were steepled, knuckles pale, the posture he used when he wanted to look calm but wasn't. The document lay open in front of me, pages clipped neatly, signature line waiting. I hadn't said a word yet. Outside, a motorcycle screamed past the house, the sound fading quickly like an interruption that didn't belong. Inside, the silence pressed harder. "Just sign it," my mother finally said, her voice too light, too practiced. "We've all talked about this already." I looked down at the paper again. Black text, legal language, my name quinted cleanly beneath the line. It was strange how something so simple could rearrange a room full of people. I lifted the pen slightly. My aunt inhaled sharply. Someone's chair creaked. And in that suspended moment, pen hovering, eyes fixed, breath held, I felt every year they'd never looked at me rush back all at once. When I was 16, I stood at the edge of my own birthday party. The living room was crowded, loud with laughter that bounced off the walls and filled every corner except where I stood. Balloons drooped from the ceiling fan. A cake sat on the table, candles already half melted, wax pooling like tears. My cousins clustered around my older brother, congratulating him on getting into a prestigious university months earlier, like the achievement had just happened. I waited. My mother passed me by twice without stopping. My father clinked glasses with my uncle. Someone turned the music up. Eventually, I cleared my throat. It came out softer than I intended. "Hey," I said, "should we do the cake?" My aunt glanced at me, eyebrows lifting just enough to acknowledge my existence. "Oh, right. In a minute." A minute stretched. Conversations resumed. I stood there holding a stack of unused plates, feeling ridiculous. That night, after everyone left, I washed dishes alone. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window above the sink. I remember thinking that if I disappeared, the silence would sound exactly the same. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It was small things first. Being left out of conversations, decisions made without asking me, family group chats where my messages went unanswered, invitations extended as an afterthought, if at all. My brother was the golden child. Everyone said it openly, like it was a joke we were all supposed to laugh at. He was confident, loud, destined for something bigger. When he spoke, people leaned in. When I spoke, people checked their phones. At family gatherings, relatives asked him about his plans, his career, his future. They asked me if I was still doing that thing with my job, like it was a phase they expected me to grow out of. Once, during dinner, my uncle laughed and said, "You're lucky your brother turned out the way he did. At least someone in the family will make us proud." The table erupted in laughter. I smiled because everyone else did. My fork scraped against my plate. The first real betrayal came quietly. My grandmother fell ill when I was in my early 20s. I was the one who drove her to appointments, sat with her in waiting rooms that smelled like disinfectant and old magazines, learned how to read her medication labels when her eyes got too tired. When she passed, I expected nothing. I never did. But when the will was read, my brother received her house, my uncle received her savings, my aunt received her jewelry. I received a hug. "We know how close you were to her," my mother said afterward, squeezing my arm. "She loved you in her own way." In her own way. Later, I found out the house had been sold within 6 months. The money went into a family business venture I'd never been told about. No one thought to tell me. No one thought I'd care. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, listening to my phone buzz with messages from cousins celebrating the new business, photos of champagne glasses, smiling faces. I typed, "Congratulations," deleted it, put the phone face down. Something shifted then. Not loudly, just enough to notice. The pattern became clearer after that. At holidays, I was seated at the far end of the table. At weddings, I was placed near the kitchen. When decisions were made about investments, trips, major purchases, I heard about them after the fact. Once, I tried to speak up. We were at my parents' house, sitting in the living room. The television played quietly in the background, a news anchor talking about markets and rising costs. My father mentioned expanding the family business. "I have some ideas," I said carefully. "I've been working in—" My uncle waved his hand without looking at me. "This isn't really your area." My brother chuckled. "Yeah, no offense. This stuff gets complicated." "No offense." I nodded, heat creeping up my neck. The conversation moved on. My words hung in the air for a second longer before disappearing. After that, I stopped offering. I stopped trying to prove myself, stopped waiting for approval that never came. I learned how invisible I could be in a room full of people who shared my blood. The shift inside me didn't come with fireworks. It came on a Tuesday. I was sitting alone in a cafe, laptop open, rain streaking the windows. I watched people hurry past outside, umbrellas tilted against the wind. My coffee had gone cold. I hadn't noticed. Across from me sat a man in his late 40s, silver at his temples, eyes sharp but kind. He was a client, technically, someone I'd been consulting for on a small project, nothing my family would have taken seriously. "You don't talk about them much," he said, glancing at my phone lighting up with a family group chat notification I didn't open. "I don't need to," I replied. He studied me for a moment. "You know," he said slowly, "people who are underestimated have an advantage. No one watches them closely." The words settled somewhere deep. That afternoon, I walked out of the cafe feeling lighter. Not hopeful, just clear. I stopped chasing visibility. I stopped explaining myself. I worked. Quietly. The years that followed didn't look impressive from the outside. I moved into a smaller apartment. I took on contracts instead of flashy roles. I built relationships one by one, learned systems, studied documents my family would have skimmed over. I learned how power actually moved, not in loud declarations, but in signatures, clauses, timing. I watched my brother struggle under expectations that were never mine, watched my uncle boast about deals that barely broke even, watched my parents age under stress they pretended not to feel. They didn't see me. That was the point. The call came on a Sunday afternoon. My mother's name flashed on my screen. I let it ring once longer than necessary before answering. "Hi," she said, breathless. "We need to talk." The urgency in her voice was new. It prickled my skin. They wanted me at dinner that night. Everyone would be there. I arrived on time. The house looked the same. Familiar. Too familiar. But something in the air felt off. Tighter. Sharper. Voices dropped when I entered the room. Dinner was awkward. Forced smiles. Polite questions that danced around something unspoken. Halfway through dessert, my father cleared his throat. "We've been restructuring," he began. "There are some complications." My uncle leaned forward. "We need your help." The words landed strangely, like a language I didn't quite recognize. They slid the document across the table, and suddenly, years of silence had a purpose. Now, back in the present, the pen still hovered above the paper. "This is just a formality," my brother said quickly, finally looking at me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're family." Family. I set the pen down gently. "Before I sign," I said, my voice steady, "I want to clarify something." They stiffened. "This document transfers controlling interest," I continued. "It gives me authority over decisions moving forward." My uncle's jaw tightened. "Temporarily." I nodded. "That's not what it says." Silence. My mother reached for her glass, hands trembling just slightly. "You trust us," she said. It wasn't a question. I met her eyes, really met them, for the first time in years. "I do," I replied, "enough to read carefully." I signed. The sound of pen on paper was louder than it should have been. When I slid the document back, the room felt different, smaller, like the walls had moved in. They tried to smile, tried to laugh. It didn't stick. The backlash came fast. Phone calls, messages, emotional appeals wrapped in nostalgia. "After everything we've done for you, you wouldn't be here without us. This isn't what we agreed on." They spoke over each other in meetings, raised voices, accusations, guilt served hot and heavy. I listened. I said very little. When they tried to rewrite history, I didn't correct them. When they demanded concessions, I didn't argue. I enforced boundaries quietly, decisively. Transfers were frozen, decisions paused. Authority exercised through emails and signatures, not shouting. Power, I learned, didn't need to announce itself. It showed up in reactions, in sudden politeness, in people waiting for your response before speaking. At the next family gathering, they watched me differently. I sat at the center of the table. The final boundary came without drama. I declined a request that would have undone everything. I did it calmly, in writing. After that, the noise faded. The calls stopped. The messages slowed. The silence returned. But this time, it felt earned. I sit alone now sometimes, thinking back to that birthday party, the sink full of dishes, the reflection in the dark window. I didn't win by fighting. I won by choosing myself. And for the first time, the quiet feels like peace.